Yeah. So for the next bit of time here, we're going to spend some time exploring Seesaw. The first half hour, we're really going to look at using Seesaw from the basic level, kind of getting it set up and what it looks like. And then the second half hour, we're going to kind of go beyond the basics and dive into some deeper settings and other tools that we might be able to use on Seesaw as well. So I'm going to jump in and share my screen. I'm Robbie Jensen. I'm the Digital Learning Coordinator at ESU3. Um, I work with alongside Kate, and I get to work with Matt and Bridget quite often in Westside. So happy to be here today. And I got my screen shared now. So um, in Seesaw, I'm in right now as a parent. You can see I'm in my parent view. Um, I through all this remote learning, Seesaw has been a great environment for me to see from the parent side and the teacher side of things quite a lot. And so right now I'm in, this is my son's class, still has students who are commenting throughout the entire summer about what's going on and even sharing videos of how their summer break is going. They're keeping it as a communication tool. But I like that feature that I'm in one app and I can be in here as a parent or I can be in here as a teacher. Right now I'm in my family account here, but I can just go in and click on the Seesaw family account, and I'm going to switch over to my teacher account. Now on the iPad, there are two different apps. There's the Seesaw family app and the Seesaw class app. You'll be using the Seesaw class app on the iPad. Um, I'm going to be showing everything today from the computer side of things, just because my screen sharing works a little bit better that way today. But all these features can work in both environments. So as I'm jumping around and showing you different things, know that this can work in the Seesaw class app as well. The Seesaw family app is how your families will access content. I really recommend using it as a family communication device. It really does help your parents and families see what they can uh, or what's happening in your classroom. I know it was a blessing for us during this remote learning to really see the work other students were doing. Kind of as a parent, you want to see how your kid's doing and if they're meeting expectations of the class. You can see some other kids' work as well, and I'm going to show you all those different things as we're jumping in. So to get started, I'm going to start a brand new class. Now in Seesaw, you can have as many classes as you want set up. Um, your classes can be set up a variety of ways. If it's an elementary environment, which is where we're seeing most Seesaw usages in that elementary environment, you may just have one class and then be organizing your content into folders or organizing it in some different ways. If you're using it in other, it doesn't have to just be elementary. If you're using it in other environments, you might have one for your fifth hour class, one for your third hour class. You can set those up to meet your needs. But I'm going to go in and just kind of guide you through what it looks like inside of Seesaw and how we set up our environment here. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to create a new class. If you get in the very first time to Seesaw, it's going to ask you exactly what you want to do, um, and it guides you through step by step. I really think that Seesaw has built a user-friendly platform that really guides the student and the parents and teachers, all of them, in a really nice and clear, concise way. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a fourth grade class today. So I'm going to call this, Mr. Jensen's room, and I can do fourth grade. You will see that I have the option to import from Google Classroom. So if you've been using Google Classroom and you want to bring in all the same students, you can click that import from Google Classroom, and it will bring those students across. Kind of depends on if you want to work in both environments or if you want to choose one environment to really lead from. But today I'm gonna start from scratch, and I'm gonna say Mr. Jensen's room, fourth grade, and I'm gonna just click my little check mark. From the teacher side and the student side, they've made all the buttons just really clear to know exactly what you're going to be doing. Um, Once you get in and you have your class set up, it'll start guiding you through saying, what do you want to do? Here's some different pieces we can add, but we're going to start by adding in students. And again, this is where Seesaw has seen all the outcomes and they just know exactly how to guide you through. So do you want your students to sign in to their Google account or an email address? If it's with their Google account, you say, yes, I want them to use Google, and it's going to build the exact work for your students. Your students will have a code when they get into the Seesaw class app on iOS, or if they go to app.seesaw.me, it'll say, I'm a student. They put in this code and they log in with their Google credentials. So with their Westside account, they can log in after putting this code. You can also um, change the sign in mode and say, you know what, maybe I don't want to use Google. Maybe I'm going to use a different version. And there's some different sign in modes. If you use something like a shared device or one to one device mode, it'll give them a QR code to scan. That's really like the major difference. I liked it since your students are in Google, I would keep it to the Google mode. And you can either email, put it on Google Classroom, or you can just guide your students through that first day you're with them and say, okay, we're going to go in, click on I'm a student, and use this unique code. This is the code that would get them into my classroom. And this code does change every 7 days. So if you're working with your students, you want to make sure that you're bringing up the most current code. They do this really out of security reasons. They don't want this code being shared and then in 2 months, some random person who's found your code gets in. Uh, for security as well, I wouldn't post this on like a public facing class website or anything. I'd make sure you're doing this with your students or emailing it directly to parents and students to be able to do this. There is this email students with instructions feature here, and it gives you an exact email to use and tells them that that code's going to expire. Some of your students have used Seesaw in the past, some haven't, so it really does guide them through both versions. If you've used it for the first time or if you are old hat at this, here's what you need to do. It copies the email and then you can send it out. I'm going to do that really quick. I'm going to email that to Kate really quick. So then you'll see once a student gets into the class as well. Kate and I add each other in a variety of Seesaw and Google Classroom classes all the time. Well, that's quickly loading. This is where we need that music, man. Okay. So now I've sent that off to my students, and I'm awaiting for them to get in. By default, you always will have a sample student that is created. I like having this sample student because then I can always see what that student might see this as from the student view. Um, and it really can be helpful to go in and see from that student view. You'll see I also have an Add Families button on here. This is a setting that may not show up at first in your account. I'm going to spend a lot more time in the second half hour looking at settings, but if I click this little wrench, I have a lot of different settings to look at. One of those being family access. Family access enables you to be able to invite families to come in and see their students' work. This is something I highly recommend to keep that line of communication open at home with what's happening in the class. And so if you enable family access, then that add families becomes a really important piece. Um, this will also manage if your families can like and comment on things. A lot of times, even when my students were, or when my two kids were in class, they would do something and they would take their iPad over and just walk me as a parent through and say, "Hey, mom and dad, this is what we did today in science. Check out our experiment." It was a video that was just being shared to the teacher and my wife and I, and then we could go in and see it and comment back and forth. So it really built those dinner table conversations that night too, because we were able to say, "Hey, I saw you did that experiment in science today. What did you find out after the experiment was done?" We were able to have those conversations, and I have they were second and fifth graders this past year, so I'm able to have those conversations instead of "What'd you do in school today?" "Oh, nothing." Now I know what they did in school today. Um, So I have these different settings, and I'm going to come into other settings a little bit later today. In the basic settings, the other thing I would just kind of point you towards is this class settings that's right here. By default, every class is set up as ocean blue. So if your students have multiple Seesaw classes that they're in, I'd recommend just, it's not a lot, but just change the color, because then you can say, hey, my color is the green class. Make sure you're in the green class right now. You can also go to this class icon, and then that'll show on their desktop what that icon is going to look like. So instead of just, Mr. Jensen would be the MJ here, maybe this is, something I want them to be guided towards. I'm going to say, we're the turtle icon, and you're going to click on the turtle and you'll get to our class here. I can also go in and add more teachers. So if I wanted a co-teacher to come into this class, maybe I have that reading specialist that I need to be in my class. I know in my son's second grade class this year, their special education teacher, he was in all the time and was able to go give certain resources to students that were on his caseload. So you can add in those co-teachers as well. And then we can see that there are other settings, but like I said, I'll jump into these a little bit more later. So now I'm into my class. I'm just refreshing here to see if my student has added yet. There we go, and there's my student. Um, Kate is now in, and now I can start to see as I do things, we'll see my student might have some different assignments that are turned in and everything, and I can drill this down by student level. But now I'm going to go to my whole class journal, and I'm going to look at how I can add different content. By default, they'll always show you this little welcome video about, hey, here's something that you can do, um, and here's how it's been used in the classroom. But we want to start looking at what we can add into the class. So in this top corner here, you'll see the add button. Like I said, Seesaw makes this easy for teachers and students. Students will have this exact same type of add button when they're doing their commenting in their work. So now I have three different types of things that I can add. I'm going to work my way from the bottom up. The first one is an announcement. So when I do that, it's simply an announcement that's going to go out, and I can say, who is this going to? Once I have family members, I can say, maybe I just want mom and dad to see what's going on, and I can send an announcement to them, or I can just send it out to all my students or everybody who's in the class. So I'm going to say right now, all my students, and I'm just going to welcome them to class. I can also add attachments. So maybe that first welcome message, whether we're remote or we're in class, maybe I can add things like a calendar. What's our weekly calendar going to be? If I click on add attachment, they, excuse me, they use a lot of pictures to help us out here. I can add in a photo, drawing, video, link, a note, or upload. The upload is any file that you might have. You will see this set of 6 choices all over in Seesaw. When you're in Seesaw, your students will see this. So this starts to get your mind thinking about what are those types of assignments my students can turn in. If they can do it on their iPad or if they can do it on their laptop, they can save that file, whether it's to the camera roll or to their files, and then they can upload that right into Seesaw for you. So maybe I wanted to upload a PDF of my calendar. I can select it from my computer or from my Google Drive. And you'll notice here, when you put it in, you can add up to 10 pictures, 1 PDF, or 1 video file. So maybe you're going to screen record yourself and just welcome them to class. That 1 video file can come in. Or you went on a field trip and you want to show 10 pictures from that field trip, you can pop those up to 10 images in at once. So I'll grab a quick file from my computer, and I'll just grab a random file. That's right. Okay. So now I've added this PDF, and your students have this right as well. When they add in a PDF, they can go in and add more stuff on top of it. So this just happens to be the PDF I had on the top there. Um, as of yesterday, I became a Google certified trainer. Just got to give myself a little props there. So there's my certificate. But I can go in and I can add text on top of this. So I can say, I need to type a little text box. You can also add in audio. So maybe a student took a picture of a project they've been working on at home and they need to describe it, whether they're early elementary or whether they're a reluctant writer in a classroom. They can go in and talk instead, and they can click on that microphone. When they click the microphone, it's going to ask them to start recording. And now I'm recording, and I can say, you know, I got this Google certified trainer, da da da. And when I'm all done, I just click the done button here. Notice the record had a little pause button as well. And it's going to add in that audio file to this document. So now there's a little play button here that would play. Now once I've done that, I can go ahead and hit this checkbox. And it's going to add that picture into my announcement. So I can add in a variety of different things. And then I'm going to say send now. So now my class sees my announcement. Here's my welcome to class announcement. It's come into class. To me, it's a really nice communication engine, whether it's with your parents or with your students. The real student power, though, is when we get to activities. I've put a link in our agenda today that takes you through a lot of different pieces on the activities library. This activities library is built around a community of teachers. So by default, we see this My Library. These are ones that I've used in the past. But if I go into community, under community, I see anything that a teacher has created and wants to share out. I noticed from a parent side of things, I noticed that my students' teachers were using these activities just as much as they were using their own activities, because there are some really high quality pieces that are built into here. And also these activities by default are sorted into your grade area. So we have fourth grade because that's what I said my classroom was. That's pre-sorted into that. And now if I said remote learning in fourth grade, here's 30 activities that have been curated. You do have to remember these are all created by other teachers around the world who are putting these resources together. I like to look at a few things when I look at these activities. First off, I look at the little hearts. This is how many teachers have liked this one enough to like heart it and look at it. But then I'm going to say creating math word problems. I can go into this community-based one and I can say, okay, what are they going to do? And you'll start to see the structure of how they build their activities. The structure is usually some kind of an image or video, and then a linear order. You're going to read this sample problem, think of an idea for a word problem, and then it's guiding students through. You'll click add response, you'll write your own word problem. Now that looks like something I might want to use in my class. So we can see if I want to use it, it's really nice that I can just click on assign. And it's going to say, oh, which class do I want to assign it in? And I'm in Mr. Jensen's room, my class that I've got here. And I'm going to assign it to my one class. Now you will see that schedule. Schedule is a paid feature, so we can't schedule it ahead of time unless you're paying for it. And then this also has the ability, if you're working with your team of teachers, say, hey, I use this activity. I can email it out to other teachers, and those teachers then can go in and use that activity to help them out as well. Maybe you want to build that repository. Today I'm going to say no thanks, I'm not going to share it out, but if I would highly recommend working with your other teachers, especially as you're building these new Seesaw environments. So now in my library, this one will actually be in there now as well. And I can see this creating a math story problem. Now we saw those community activities that are out there. And when you get started, this is...
Hey, Robbie.
Yeah, please.
A couple questions from the chat room. Can you select more than one grade level at a time. And I assume, um, Jenny Brockman, were you talking about looking in the activity library? Is that where you were referring to for multiple grade levels with the filter? Yeah. Yeah. Can you select and search through multiple?
It, it searches through one at a time when you do it here, and then it searches that grade levels. So you kind of have to jump between grades. You can also do an all and then do a subject search instead, but that will do like a K-8 search. So that is kind of one difference with it. I have noticed that a lot of like they're in kind of grade bands, so some things will be tagged with a first grade, second grade, third grade tag, so they might show up in all three. But you do have to search it by this grade level. You can also type in your content that you're looking for. So if you're, starting to look at a certain content standard, you can just search it in here as well, and then in that case you could do all, and then it would search across all grade bands and then see what activities they might want to use from there.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. Were there any other questions before I move on?
I don't think anything for the general group right now.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so then I'm going to go back to my activity library here. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of show you what it looks like to create your own activity. Again, remember that whole like linear order of the activity that's out there. So I can first go in and um, so I'm going to do a reading a clock, and then I can start to put in all of my instructions for my students. This is something I really like about using Seesaw, is this whole linear approach. So we put it in order and we say, um, you know, maybe I have a video of them reviewing how to read time on an analog clock. Then I can go through and I can say, now use the template. So here I could have a template of clock faces. Maybe this is a PDF that you have from your curriculum. Maybe this is a document that you've created that you want students to be able to use. You can add in a template, and again, you have those same options here of what you want your students to work with. So maybe I had a clock face worksheet that I needed them to work on. I could upload that file right here. Each student would then get that template when they use it. Much like the make a copy happened in Google Classroom this morning, this will give a copy to each student to work on. I can also add voice instructions, especially for your early elementary. I highly recommend doing your voice instructions. This will give, first off, it lets them hear your voice. If you're in class they're working on this in class, it means you're not walking around and answering the same question 20 times on how to do it. But if they're at home and they're doing any home-based instruction, they're getting that teacher voice and they're getting that teacher awareness, and I can go in and I just hit record. And I get up to 2 minutes and I can say, class, we've been working a lot on reading an analog clock. Make sure you take the worksheet and look at the number or the shorthand. That's the one we've really been struggling with. So make sure we were really looking at that. And then I stop it, it puts it in there, and now that's part of the directions. And if I have any other instructions, I can attach other instructions here as well. I could bring in a video. Maybe I did a screen recording and I want to share that. I can bring that in as a multimedia piece as well. And I like this on the teacher side. I can add in teacher notes because next year I'm going to want to reuse some of these activities and I'm going to want to go in and make some notes. Maybe this is the standards that it's covering, so you can kind of go back and look through. Or maybe if you're going to share this to the community, then you are saying like, hey, here's some things I was thinking about when I was using this as well. So we can add in these different notes. And when we're all done, we can click on save. Now, obviously, I would make sure I had this a lot more filled out and structured when I was all done. But now that I've created it, I can go in and I can assign this. By clicking on assign, I would then ask me which class is getting this, and I can assign it to the class. Now, this activity library is one of those places you could get lost in for hours because there are some amazing teachers out there who are really pushing Seesaw to different limits. They're reimagining the old school like web quests and different resources like that, and really having students go through and work through a lot of content inside of Seesaw. When you're all done in the activity library, sometimes I feel confused sometimes as to how do I get out of here. There's a little back to class in the upper right corner that will take you back to your class. And now you can see as when we get in here, I have my word problem and my reading a clock are now in as the activities here. You will notice any activity has these three buttons here, and I can go in and I can delete it if I want to get rid of that activity, edit that activity, or get a link that would specifically be to this activity. So then I could email mom and dad and say, hey, this one activity I've been having a hard time getting your student to work with. I can get that direct link right to it. So that is kind of that 10,000 foot view of what you can do inside of Seesaw. And are there any questions on that kind of big picture view before we kind of spend the next 25 or 30 minutes digging into some more examples here?
Robbie, one thing, I'm not sure if it's part of this segment, a different segment, or some other thing. Is there a way for like an administrator or somebody to message out like all students, like for across multiple Seesaw classes?
Are you paying for Seesaw?
All of our K2 students will have Seesaw for schools.
So I think in that capacity, depending on how it's set up, that can be set up. That's something we can dig into more.
Okay, so we can take that in a different conversation and get some things
Yeah,
set up there.
let's play around with that because I think that is a possibility when you have Seesaw schools implemented. Because
Okay.
you're going to use like Active Directory or something to create all the accounts then in classes or not?
Yep. I think actually to simplify things, we're going to have stuff run through Clever.
Oh, perfect.
So yeah. All right. So that
Yeah.
might be a possibility then for building administrators to be able to communicate with teachers and students through it.
I'm pretty certain of that, but we'll have to jump in and mess around with that.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay. So now we're going to jump in and look at some more advanced features. Really, a couple of the big pieces we're going to look at in here is using folders to help organize your content. And then we're also going to look at Seesaw blogs. And I'm going to start by jumping into this little wrench icon here and looking at those settings again. Now, earlier I mentioned some of these settings, but now I want to jump in and kind of show you some other pieces that can happen when it comes into the settings. And I'm going to jump down a little bit lower here. So this one here is called the class blog. The blog, what this does, if I turn this on, this lets you pick a selection of student work to put on an open-faced website that really is making it public on the internet, as public as you want. You can also password protect it. So I know that one of my students' classes used this, one of my son's classes used this year, and it helped us kind of see that repository of all those big things to showcase online. It really helped to give a face to all the instruction that was happening throughout the year. And then anything that goes on this blog is completely it's all guarded by you, the teacher. You decide if it can be approved or not. But once you set one up, you set up a public blog and you pick, it'll be blog.seesaw.me. See if it's available. That one happens to be available. There we go. And then it's saying, do you want comments on this? So your students' work, not only do you have that family access with this blog, they could be sharing that out with grandma and grandpa and and aunts and uncles to be able to see. Um, and also, do you want to password protect this? So are you going to let them have comments on the blog as the first choice? And then if you're going to password protect these, we're going to go in and I'm just going to make a random password for now. Um, there we go. So I can always view and change that password later. So then it says, hey, you're all set up, and just so you can kind of see what it's going to look like. So this is really what that blog feed looks like. And the blog can also have a QR code as well. The one thing I like from the student perspective is they start to see how many visits the page has had. And so we can really see all those different connections that are being made. And it'll also show like analytics about how many posts are up there. But the visits are really what students like to jump in and explore. So now that that's all created, and so now blog becomes a new option that is set up over here. So anytime we have a student post that we want to highlight, we can click on that little globe, or you can have a student over a course of a few weeks working on projects and say, okay, now pick that, star that one item that you really want to broadcast and show as your strongest work over the past couple weeks. They can click the globe and you would then approve it to go out onto the blog. It's a really nice activity to be able to share as you start getting different pieces of content in and connected content, then you can just put them out on that blog. And again, like I keep saying, Seesaw is so good about knowing the issues and questions people might have. So there's even like a little show me how that'll take you to their help.seesaw page and will walk you exactly through how to share inside of a blog. So we've done the creation, but then it's how do I go in and set it up? How do I enable comments? So that's all set up for you. And blog does not show up until you enable it in that little wrench menu to be able to show up in there. As you start using Seesaw more and more, you're going to see ways that you're going to want to customize this for yourself. You're going to want to personalize this. In this blog feature here, I can even customize little things with this gear, put a description. I could put a header image, just being aware of what images you're using. But then I can go in and have those descriptions that are out there. This is what, welcome to Mr. Jensen's 4th grade. Here's a highlight of all of our activities throughout the year. And then each student has an area in that blog to be able to share their content and share their masterworks that they've been working on. The next setting I want to show you inside of our little wrench here is just under blogs, and that's called folders. Most of you have some kind of folder structure in your emails or your computers. You like to be organized with your content. Folders are a really nice way to be able to organize your content. In most of your classrooms, you're going to have, in an elementary setting especially, you're going to have one class where all your students are in, and you're going to want to maybe give them some organization, help your students start to see that executive functioning. So we're going to have a folder for math, or we're going to have a folder for reading. So I can go in and say manage folders, and I can create as many folders as I want. And maybe it's just for a project. Maybe you have a big cumulative project or cross-curricular project you want to use. You can make a folder that houses all those resources for that. So I'm going to just say that this is my math folder, and that one's going to be orange. I'm going to create a folder here, and this is going to be my reading folder. I'll create one more, and this will be, our big mega project folder. This helps in a variety of ways. First, I'm creating that folder where all those things live, but then it also helps me with that classroom instruction piece where I can say, hey, go jump into your orange math folder, just like I would in the classroom. It's why I make worksheets in blue sometimes, just so I can say, get the blue worksheet out. I can say, hey, go to the orange math folder, and they're going to be able to go in and use that folder to help them out to find all of their math resources. In folders, it'll also give me as the teacher the ability to add things to the folder, like when I add a resource. I can also do that for students and teachers. So maybe I have a big reader's response notebook that I have due every week. I can have my students say, put this in the reader's response folder. So then as the teacher, I just go into reader's response folder. I really just said that because my fifth grader is next to me and hates his reader's response notebooks, and I wanted to see his face. um, so I'm going to go and add that step, and then I'll show you what that looks like when we're using it here. So I'm going to jump out and go into my class. And as I add a resource, or if a student adds a resource, I'm going to go in and I'm going to assign an activity. And remember, this works on iOS and your laptop as well. You can be doing this assignment and all of this right here. And I'm just going to assign this really quick. Read and reflect. Click on assign. I clicked the button too fast here. I'm going to click assign right here from the ones that I've kept in my library. And I can go in here and I can say, you know what? I want to actually just put this in a certain folder here. I want to make sure I put this in my reading folder. So it's going to put it into that folder. And also notice here when I assign this, I might just have a group of students I need to assign this to. So right now it's to all students, but maybe I just need it to this Kate here. I can make sure I give it to just this Kate. But right now I'll say all students, but I want it in that reading folder. I click my check mark, and I'm going to assign it to my one class. And now when I go back to class, I'm going to see that it's organized right here. Assignment is in the reading folder. This helps you as a teacher to be fairly organized, helps your students see that executive functioning piece as well. Now, one thing as I was getting in here earlier and adding that assignment, I saw as the teacher, I have 3 unapproved posts in here, so I need to go and review those. Anytime you are in your class, you're going to see if you have things that are waiting to be reviewed for you as the teacher. So I'm going to go into my unapproved posts here. And there we go. So Ms. Kate Carlson here, she was able to go in and do the assignment. So I can go in and approve it. What this does is this pushes that assignment out. It sends it in. I'm first seeing that she's done it, but then it will also put it into her activities that she has completed. So there she's got a reading a clock one here. As a teacher, sometimes you're going to go through and maybe see that you have 20 things to approve. You don't have to click approve on all of them. You can approve all, but I like the ability to go through and scroll through them all before I do that. I can also make comments and be like, well, you know, Kate, maybe you should, you know, look at this again and try to do whatever. And I can give her some other comments and I can post that back to her. So when she gets this, she's going to see that the teacher went in and made a comment about it. I can also go in here and say, this has been some of Kate's best work. I want to put this on the blog. So here's where this comes into place, and I can just click it and it's going to publish it right to the blog. It will not publish until I've approved this entire activity. You'll see these other items on here as well. You have your folder. So it says, hey, this should probably go into our math folder. And then it organizes it by math here. And then this one here is the skills. And so skills is an upgrade cost thing. We've seen it a couple times. I just want you to know that that's something in the paid feature. So I think with Seesaw class, you'll be able to use skills. So if you have certain skill sets that you're working on, you can tag them by those skill sets as well. So now I'm going to say approve all, and all three of those posts from my different versions of Kate are going to be approved here. So now I can go into Kate student here and see all of her work is in there. Slowly but surely. Sorry, it's taken a while. I see Kate student has 2 items in here, and Miss Kate Carlson has 1 item in here. Looks like I have 1 more unapproved post here. I think it's because I'm sharing my screen and my internet and everything is just kind of slow right now. There we go. There you go. So now she commented back on my comment on her. Since I didn't finish that comment, she's giving me some feedback. And that's one thing I would really highlight, whether it's with Google Classroom or with Seesaw. Those comments, especially when they're doing home-based instruction, those comments can really help drive instruction. Um, Sometimes when you see these things like, wow, great job, those aren't really giving the best feedback. So make sure your feedback does matter. Your students are looking at it and they're waiting to know, what do I need to fix? Or how can I make this better? Um, in most cases, that's what your students are thinking. Um, there are those few students who are like, I'm done. I don't care what your comment is. That's always going to be the case. But in most cases, it is definitely like they want your feedback and your authentic feedback when you get in there. So now I have my class really set up. I'm going to just double check in my settings here. It is really getting slow on me today, and I apologize about that. So now we've added blogs, we've added folders, and then here's where that skill set kind of comes in. Um, One other setting that you can look at, especially if you're on the iPads and you're worried about home internet, you can decide on what the video quality is. By default, it's going to be at this 320p, which is like the lowest quality video. Because with our video, it's really about the content of the video. Like when we're doing something in Seesaw, it's usually to just demonstrate a quick understanding or to do a quick check for knowledge type of a thing. We don't always need like a high def video that's going to come through. If you're doing high def video projects, you're probably capturing that video somewhere else. So I would keep the quality lower just to make sure that your students' videos are uploading quicker and they're being able to added to a lot faster here. The last piece I'll show you here is the ability, we've talked about the ability to add families. So when you get into here, you can go in and invite your families. Whether you have, parents' email address or their cell phone numbers, you're pulling it out of your student information system, you can go in and put that per student. One thing I've seen is there's a class invite that happens where it invites it invites a parent to the entire class. I would really caution you from doing that and do this invite instead, where it's specific to their student, because then they're seeing the entire class. In this case, they would see just Kate Carlson's parents would see Kate Carlson's content. There's also a print invite here, and the print invite lets you pick your language that you want to print it in. When you print it, it'll then create a PDF file that you can print out. And that PDF file, once it's created here, is based on the student. So you'll see I had 3 students in class. It gives me a direction page, but then it's here's Kate Carlson's family invite. I send this home. Mom and dad can go on their phone and scan this QR code. And this is the other Kate Carlson. This is, since I have my 2 Kates in class. Always happens you get 2 of the same name in your class. But I have these QR codes for each of my students that I can send home in their take-home folder, or I can save that file. One of the other options I had here was to share an invite link. So I could also, if I'm not going to be sending home paper folders, I can copy and share this link, and it lets them choose their student's name once they get set up in there. So if they that process, it looks a little bit different than that QR code process. It'll actually take them in specifically to your class, and then they have to pick who their child is.
Hey, Robbie.
Yes.
Couple things. I think the first thing that you said about inviting parents, I think we want to stick with inviting them just specific to their child rather than the
Sure.
whole course. Just with student privacy issues, it's best if they only see the work of their kid with it.
Yep.
The second comment's actually a question. Can you have nested folders? When you talked about like the green math folder or the blue social studies, can you have a green math folder and then a second label with like this week's assignments, next week's assignments, things like that? Or is it just one level deep of here's all of our math stuff?
That is a phenomenal question, Matt. Let's look at that together. So I'm just going to see here if I go into math. Yeah, it looks like it's just one level deep.
Okay. So if somebody wanted to organize it a little bit, they'd have to do like math week one, math
Yeah.
week two, something like that.
Yeah, there's no way to nest them. And I'm seeing that come through in the chat here now, too. Someone saying no way to nest them. So,
Okay.
yeah. That'd be nice if you could, that's for sure.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, and I highly would recommend keeping it to that, just inviting the parents in to see their kids. Um, yeah, just being on the parent end of that, where I've been in classes that have had it shared both ways. I don't want a notification every time every student does something in class either. So, are there any other questions when it comes to using Seesaw? Like Kate said earlier with Google Classroom, we are a resource. If you just want to make a class and let people try and break it for you or submit assignments just so you can see what that looks like, please reach out. I mean, Kate or I or Matt or Bridget, we can all help with that. We get into lots of classrooms to try and help in those kind of scenarios as well. So let us know if we can ever be of a resource as you're trying this, or if you have questions, send us an email and we're happy to help with that as well.